And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
This is your RBLR Race podcast. I'm your host, Zach Dobb, along with my co-host, Pat Davenport. Pat, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. I've had a really, really busy week, actually. I've been here, there, and everywhere, late nights, seeing other sports, getting cold, and missing baseball. That's basically it. I'm a sleepy boy, I think, today. We're doing a bit later than we would normally do our pod. So I'm feeling those Sunday night blues a little bit. There's usually a day game on or something right about now, and I'm just yearning to have, the Rays leading the Blue Jays in the seventh inning in a nice and easy day game. Taj Bradley went 6 1/3 and Brandon Lau hit a home run. We're not far away, but I am yearning. I'm feeling a yearning for baseball right now. How are you?
I am good. I'm feeling that yearning as well. We're kind of getting towards the end of most other major sports, at least for me. I'm not a big basketball guy, so we're getting towards the end of football. College football wraps up tomorrow. NFL wraps up in the next couple of weeks. My teams are both out of it, so I'm just kind of watching just to see what happens. I have some rooting interest through my dad in one of the teams that's still left in the NFL playoffs, so I'm excited about that. But it is definitely that point of the offseason where I'm like, when do pitchers and catchers report? Soon, right? It's like, it's middle of February, right? So we're getting there. About a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting. I believe it's the 15th, the pitchers and catchers report for the Rays.
Yeah, something around that. And 32 days till the first spring training game. So we're just over a month till our first spring training game. We've talked on this podcast before about spring training games and how we have varying levels of interest in spring training baseball. But to just have something baseball related happening would be great, because I'm sure we'll talk about this more in a couple of minutes. But this off season, it ain't been it.
It has not been it, but you know what has been it? Doing this show with you and with all of you watching. We thank you all for joining us all off season long. We are really excited to kind of take you guys with us back into the regular season. It is coming very, very soon. We appreciate all of you who stuck with us all throughout the offseason. If you want to say you've enjoyed the show, you can do that by following us on social media or dropping us a subscribe on YouTube, liking the video if you're watching it there, or on whatever social media platform you're watching us on. You could also do as a thank you by kind of joining in with us. We'd love to hear from you guys, hear what you think about what we're going to talk about. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to talk about some of the recent free agent news. Some hopes were dashed over the weekend, unfortunately. I guess it wasn't really the weekend. It was a little before the weekend. Hopes were dashed. We're going to do some player reviews from the bullpen, some really, really high octane arms that are going to be a big part of the bullpen going into 2025. So we got a lot for you. So if you enjoy what you're seeing, do us a huge favor and like and subscribe, because it really does help us out. It's free, supports us, shows us you're enjoying what you're watching. So as I was alluding to, the big news in MLB over the last week, Roki Sasaki, shocker, couldn't see it coming, and absolutely nobody predicted this. Roki Sasaki agrees to a contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And Pat, I think you've got some feelings on this.
Yeah, I definitely got some feelings on this, and I got two things that I kind of want to get off my chest about Roki Sasaki. The first thing was, I think we were quite prominent voices on saying that the Rays had a legit shot on the Rays getting Sasaki. I thought that we kind of lined up with all of what Roki and his agent was saying he wanted. So first of all, I want to address that, because it turns out they were lies, which is really frustrating from like a fan point of view. Like, let me be perfectly clear from the outset that Roki Sasaki is totally allowed to sign for whoever he wants, and that's his prerogative. He has the power to do that, and that's completely fine. Him signing with the Dodgers is completely fine. What I think is unfair is the way that he was publicized by his agent to the Western fan bases. I think it was emotionally manipulative and in bad faith. And I think that because the things that he set out that he wanted was a mid to small market. He went to either the biggest or the second biggest baseball team in the world.
Mm-hmm.
He said he wanted to not be influenced by players. But then it's come out in reports that Shohei Ohtani was a big influence and was often kind of like talking to him throughout the process and was probably influencing him to come to the Dodgers. And I'm sure Yamamoto would have been on board with that as well. He also said, I don't care about the history. I don't care about any of that nonsense. I just want to know who's going to make me the best pitcher. And the Dodgers do have a good track record of pitching development, but there were other teams that did not. Like, I don't think the Blue Jays have a good recent track record of pitching development. Look at Alek Manoah, right, who was meant to be their main guy, and apparently the Blue Jays were really close to signing Roki Sasaki. And I can't confirm or deny this, but I also believe that he was going to sign with the Dodgers from the very start, and this was all just kind of just chauvinistic, like look at me stuff.
I think the thing that makes it so strange for us as fans and trying to understand what exactly his goals were and what exactly he wanted out of this whole experience was when you take the dichotomy of what he said and you also take into account the moves MLB teams and front offices made. You look at the Blue Jays acquiring Miles Straw to free up. They clearly felt like they had a shot at bringing him in. So, and they wouldn't have done that unless through his agent or through him directly, they felt like they had a really good chance to bring him on, which makes it even weirder that he just went and signed with the Dodgers in the end anyway. That's where I think your feelings, not only are backed up, I think, by what other fans would say. I even think some executives might agree with you a little bit that it seems very, it seems a little, emotionally manipulative is a good word for it, because it just feels like there was never really going to be anything else done, and they led people along, and teams made moves that you cannot unmake. The Blue Jays are just stuck with Miles Straw now. I mean, nothing against Miles Straw; he's a fine MLB baseball player, but he's just on their team now, and they clearly only did that to free up the international space for Roki Sasaki because they felt like they were going to get him. So it's a very weird. It's another weird chapter in this kind of experience we've been getting of players coming over from Japan. The last three big ones went to the Dodgers. It makes you wonder what the future of that is going to be. Are we just going to see every big, Japanese free agent that's going to get posted? There is an outfielder. His name escapes me at the moment. There's an outfielder who's played really well and is looking to potentially get posted in this time next year. Is he just going to go to the Dodgers too? Is that just a pipeline that exists right now? Obviously the Dodgers have a lot of great things, including apparently the importance of Jackie Robinson. Also, apparently, it was a very big deal to Roki Sasaki. And if it is great for him, I'm really happy. Jackie Robinson is a very important figure in American history and baseball history. Something tells me it was not a huge factor, but Buster Only would disagree with me on that one, I guess. It's a very weird situation. It's frustrating for fans of other teams because you just see the Dodgers continue to succeed. But at the end of the day, they're operating within the rules.
They absolutely are. They absolutely are operating within the rules. The only other point I wanted to make before we go to a broader discussion on the Dodgers and baseball, on Roki specifically, was that according to Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times, the Rays had some really productive and kind of encouraging conversations with Sasaki and his agent. And apparently, they really he had a good relationship developing with Kyle Snyder and Kevin Cash. He really liked what he heard from them, which is all stuff we predicted would happen. But apparently, one of the biggest downsides and something that kind of really turned him off was, hey guys, I don't know where you're playing, and actually, I don't know if you guys are going to be in Tampa in 6 years' time, or even in St. Petersburg, or even in Florida. So this is the thing that we've been talking about all off season, because there's been barely any baseball stuff other than Danny Jansen signing. All we've had to talk about was how we're going to have a bad off season and nothing's going to happen because no one's going to want to sign on because of this whole stupid thing with the stadium because of a hurricane that blew up the stadium, which then, after it blew up the stadium, delayed votes on getting a new stadium that was essentially already agreed. The new politicians then delayed the vote, which was not great. But then also Stu Sternberg's now got the money and refusing to do anything with it. So the Rays, the baseball team, I love and support with all my heart, but they are being actively destroyed by their local authority and owner, not in equal measure, but both have a part to play. And it is preventing us and preventing our very capable front office from doing stuff. And it's so frustrating. And I wish there was a little bit more anger towards Stu Sternberg. And I wish there was a way that MLB could step in and say, you as an owner are not acting responsibly or in the club's interest and need to do something about it.
I have frequently in the past been very vocal about how I feel about Stuart Sternberg, and my opinions really haven't changed. I said a couple of nice things on his behalf. We were discussing how the delaying of the bonds could increase prices, but the truth is, what I have always believed is that Stu Sternberg is not fit to be an MLB owner because, frankly, he's unwilling or unable to put in the capital that is necessary to improve the team. He is unwilling or unable to market the team well enough to increase revenues.
And he doesn't act in the team's best interest.
He's not acting in the team's best interest. He's acting in his best interest as an owner, which I can't really I can't blame him for trying to act in his own best interest necessarily. But when you're the owner of a Major League Baseball team and it feels like you are actively acting against the best, the best interest of that Major League Baseball team, it leaves you feeling frustrated as a fan because it feels like you have, and maybe it wouldn't be this bad if we didn't feel like we had the best executive and best manager and best pitching coach and best development team in MLB, which he has to get some credit for hiring those people and allowing those people to exist. I give most of that credit to Neander for continuing to hire those people, but that is what it is. We have to say that. That's just the one thing I'll give him credit for. But it is so frustrating to see these guys do so well every single year and then get handcuffed by their owner, who will not provide them the resources and will also actively act in their whatever the opposite of best interest, the least interest, their worst interest, and put them in situations where they lose out. Well, does Roki Sasaki come here if there's no delays and we just roll right into the new stadium being built and they immediately announce they're going to fix the trop? Who knows? But we know for, as much a fact as we can know, that it was a factor in him not coming here. And when you're already fighting against things, being a small market team, you cannot afford to have things like that go against you when you are trying to bring in free agents. Starting pitching was not necessarily a point of weakness. I think I would be if for some reason this was a surefire outfielder that would have fixed our outfield problems, I think I might go ballistic because, that would really send me over the edge. I think it being a pitcher, I'm a little more restrained in my frustration, but I do completely feel exactly what you're saying and completely agree. It's a frustrating time to be a Rays fan right now.
Yeah, exactly what you said. Would we have signed Roki Sasaki if we knew exactly what was happening with the stadium? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But we're not able to put our best foot forward as a team and an organization because our owner, the person that should be the most responsible for making sure the team looks and feels as good as it possibly can be and puts its best foot forward to the rest of the league, is actively harming that. And I think that is an absolute disgrace. And I don't know what it's going to take for MLB to step in on this guy because they approved the bonds over a month ago now and they've still not said anything. And I think what's happening is the Rays are just hoping that someone will step in and cancel it for them so Stu Sternberg can just develop property there and not have to worry about it. But he needs to be forced to sell the team. And I don't like Chris Latvala, but he's right. Stu Sternberg needs to sell the team because he's only using it to benefit himself. And every other MLB owner, whether they're spending or not, is like most of the time acting in the team's best interest.
Yeah, and I mean, there's exceptions to that, but the great majority, and it's just really hard to see a baseball team perform the way the team performs last year, notwithstanding last year was a down year. But when you look back at the track record of this team in recent years, and you see the resources that they are given to get to that next level, it's just frustrating to watch because you feel like there's an artificial ceiling that's been input on this organization by the ownership. And again, this is something that if you're just tuning into the show and you haven't listened to us talk before, first of all, thanks for joining us. And if you want to defend Stu Sternberg, feel free to do so in the comments if this is your first time or not. But I am not, and I don't think Pat is either, suggesting the team needs to spend $300 million a year. I'm not even suggesting they need to spend $150 million a year. I'm suggesting they need to be spending $120 million every single year because there just, to me, doesn't seem to be a good reason not to. And if you spent, like, think about the difference, those extra $50-60 million, maybe sometimes it's closer to 30 or 20, depending on the year, but even that little extra could bring one more guy to fill a hole or something. It just feels like every year, we were talking about this before we got on the show, there's always a hole that if you just brought in somebody to kind of fill that hole and be that guy on this team, you might go to the next level. And it just feels really frustrating to watch us year after year after year clearly. And again, it's not like Eric Neander and everybody else in Ray's player development and Ray's leadership doesn't know about these holes. They are watching the games. They are evaluating the talent on the team just the same way we are. They can see the holes. They are not filling it for whatever reason. And we, at this point, we are left to, because we don't know why they're not doing it, we are left to believe that it is because they are not being given the capital to do so. Right.
100%. And like you said, if this was Shohei Ohtani getting posted early, right? Like he got posted in the kind of where he could get paid what he wanted. But if he got posted at this point in Sasaki's career, and we missed out on Shohei Ohtani because of the stupid stadium saga, like, what are we doing? So I'm going to move on because I feel like we could go around in circles, and this is like an age-old discussion. I just think we're at a breaking point as a team, particularly with the team's relationship with its own area, that something's got to give in some direction. And I just need someone to make a decision somewhere.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think, in a minute, we'll talk about the Dodgers because it's hot on everyone's lips right now, but I'll let you wrap up your thoughts on Stu and the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, a lot has been masked by how good the team has played. I think these conversations would have accelerated if the team was performing poorly. Problem is, the good thing for Stu Sternberg is he has hired really good people, and they are all contributing to a really great team being put together. And this team could probably win 90 games as is anyway this year. And so the calls, I think if this was a team that was losing a lot of games, the calls to sell the team would be much louder, but they're really not that loud because, hey, we've got Brandon Lau. Hey, we've got Carson Williams coming. Junior Caminero is literally annihilating baseballs as we speak. I don't know, to a lot of fans, it's probably like, I don't know, man, we're pretty good. Like, we could be worse. And that's where, and it just goes round and round and round.
Yeah, 100%. So the Dodgers are on everyone's lips, and this is a Rays podcast, but like this kind of, the reason the Dodgers are being talked about is because it's in relation to the rest of baseball. So this is like a baseball story. And obviously they signed Sasaki, but they've had a massive offseason, signing Michael Conforto, re-signing Teoscar Hernandez, signing Ha-Seong Kim, and then also bringing on Blake Snell. They've had a massive offseason as the defending champions. They're going to push their payroll well north of $300 million. And I think the big tipping point, weirdly, has been Tanner Scott breaking news over the past couple of days. Tanner Scott signing with the Dodgers for 4 years, $72 million, which is big money for a reliever. And 4 years is quite a long contract for a reliever as well. But the reports were that the Blue Jays and Red Sox have potentially offered him similar money and years, and in some reports, more money but he's choosing to take less to go to LA and be part of the super team there because Shohei Ohtani's only on $2 million and they got all these other guys. I'll ask you this as a question. Do you think, because this is what people online are asking, does the league need to step in?
So the league, I think, should step in, but they should not step in to punish the Dodgers. It is not anybody else's fault that the Dodgers have operated within the rules and created an environment where players want to go. This is what we've seen this happen across sports, across multiple different, whether it's basketball, football. Yeah, I don't know as much about football or soccer, so I don't know if this happens as much. But like back in the 2010s Patriots days, players would take less to come play with Tom Brady because they think they would get a shot at a ring. And a lot of times they did get a shot at a ring or won a ring. And that happened throughout his time there, especially towards the end where he was taking a lot less, as Shohei has kind of done, is taking less right now, at least, to allow guys to come and build that team. I don't think they should be punished. The problem is not the Dodgers. The problem is the Rays and the A's and the Pirates and teams like that are at the bottom of the league that are not spending and making it competitive. To me, because you can't do anything about the Dodgers having a great environment and players wanting to go play there. Could you enforce steeper penalties on salary cap? Maybe. Could you make the whole deferment thing illegal? I guess so. But it seems unlikely that the league would step in to punish one team specifically. It makes to me more sense to look at the other teams and say, why aren't you guys doing this? Because there is nothing stopping any other Major League Baseball team from doing exactly what the Dodgers are doing, except for probably having the baseball minds to do it in their front office. No offense to all those other teams, but clearly the Dodgers just have excellent people there. So that's part of it. Maybe it's the ownership having the money, but I think it's also just the willingness to be that creative and to, invest in creating that environment. And you can't punish the Dodgers for building a really good baseball team and a really good clubhouse. What you need to do is force the other teams to, you can't copy the Dodgers maybe no one's ever going to be the Dodgers, but you got to force teams to get closer to that, whether that's a salary cap floor or whatever it may be. Bringing in a floor causes other problems is not a simple solution, but I think it's reasonable that the league should do something about it, but I don't think the solution is punishing the Dodgers. I think the solution is trying to raise the other teams that are underpaying, across the board and are trying to skate by on lower salaries and bring in revenue just to line the owners' pockets, to bring their payrolls up through one way or the other to then create a little bit more competitive balance. But even as I say that, there's been a lot of parity in MLB. I don't know. I feel like if the league's doing something, it's got to be to those lower teams, not to the Dodgers.
Yeah. I agree in principle, but I agree that every team, apart from the Dodgers, could spend more than what they claim they can. Like, the Rays can spend more, and even the Yankees could spend more than what they claim they can. Right? Because
they can.
Yeah, they could if they wanted to. And honestly, I also think, of course, the Dodgers are going to spend $350 million because the penalty for spending too much money is you spend more money. And when money is meaningless, like it is to the Dodgers, like it's no object, then I'll spend way over the cap and spend more money. Who cares? It's just money.
Yeah.
So, but I do kind of object to that everyone can be the Dodgers. That's physically impossible. Sure. The Rays revenue in the tax year 2023 was $300 million. That's not their profit. That's their revenue. The Dodgers are spending more than the Rays' total revenue on their team payroll. The Rays are physically incapable because of their market size and TV deals. Because let's be honest, St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay area does not have the population density or the lucrative TV deals that Los Angeles, California has.
Right.
Nor does it have the kind of, to say what the kids are saying these days, the aura of Los Angeles, the city, right? That's a place where you go to be a star. right? People don't go to St. Petersburg, Florida to be a star. And that's no dig at St. Petersburg. It's a lovely place, but it's not got that kind of appeal to mid-20s athletes that want endorsement deals. Right? So
Right.
I disagree with the idea that any team can be the Dodgers. All teams could spend more money, but there's more to it than that. And
to clarify a little bit what I meant, I don't think they should all spend the money. All teams can operate and attempt to create a good clubhouse environment and be creative with salaries. That's kind of what I mean, is all teams can do those things. Like the idea that like the deferred money is not something that's exclusive to the Dodgers. And you might use it in different ways, and not all players may be willing to take that. I mean, maybe Shohei was a unique example of someone who's willing to do something like that. But I think that all teams can be creative and create good clubhouse environments, but not all teams are willing to or able to acquire the people and the ownership is willing to provide maybe the minimum level of capital to do that. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I agree in principle with a salary floor. It'll be tough to implement, I think, because there's
Yes.
lots of ins and outs of that. But definitely incentives to not be in the bottom. Let's say the bottom three in pay. If you're under a certain threshold, maybe instead of it being like you have to be over this threshold, perhaps if you're not, you lose a draft pick.
Yeah,
because you're not trying. But then again, you could also argue the Rays have been trying.
So, and I think this gets back kind of to we talk so much about payroll, and we have been, at least in this conversation. And at the end of the day, what you're judged on in Major League Baseball is whether or not you win. And the Dodgers have won a lot of baseball games. That being said, they've won 2 World Series in the last 4 years, which is awesome, and it's something the envy of every Major League baseball team, world round. Before 2020, which they won in the truncated season year. Do you know when their last World Series was before 2020, just out of curiosity?
I don't.
1988.
Right.
So I say that to say, just because and they were spending a lot of money for a significant period of time before that, and they've been spending money this entire time. So spending the most money does not necessarily win you the World Series, and we all know that. I think what we're getting at when we talk about the increase in spending is what we were kind of referring to back when we were talking about the Rays and how there always seems to be a hole. I think that's kind of the case on most teams. Most teams would look and say, we have a hole in our team. We need to do something to fill that hole, and spending more money, might be able to get us there. And that's where, a salary floor maybe ends in more teams have some of those holes filled. The counter to that is that there's not enough players to fill all the holes. So,
right.
It's spending doesn't automatically mean winning. I think what I'm getting at least is spending a little bit more for the right organization might mean more winning. It might not. It might. And I feel like as a fan, I want to at least see and I mean, that's not a good way to run an organization, but I'm not the GM. I'm a fan. And as a fan, I want to see us take a shot because we've been playing it within the organizational guidelines for a long time. And and it's been very successful, but we've always felt like we've missed that one piece. And I think there's a lot of teams that could feel the same way, where they've got good baseball teams, but they're missing something. And the ownership is not taking that next step to get that piece, to bring that team up to the next level. And I think if more teams were incentivized to do that, we'd have a better baseball league all around, because there would be that incentive to pay guys and be that incentive to build those really good baseball teams. Because right now, what's the incentive to be good as a baseball team? I mean, you would think it would be, well, by the name of the game, you want to win games. You win more games, you make more money. And that's true. But the problem is that as a Major League Baseball team, the A's have kind of tested this out. There's a kind of a floor of revenue that you bring in as a baseball team. And if you're okay with that as an owner, there's nothing to stop you from doing that.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And I think MLB would have to get creative to get a solution that properly works. Because also, there could be a team like the Blue Jays that are earnestly trying to spend money and just coming up short everywhere because everyone's going to the Dodgers. Yeah, but their willingness is there to spend money, and if their payroll was where the Rays is, but they're actually trying to spend the money, it would be unfair to penalize them for coming up runner-up on a bunch of people. So it's very tricky. And I'm also glad the Orioles aren't spending money. Like,
helps us if they're not.
Again, if you're an Oriole fan, you'll be fuming. You'll be absolutely fuming about it. That sounds like it's more a GM problem than a ownership problem. But I digress. Do you know what's something that you don't actually have to spend a lot of money on, but provides a lot of value, Zach?
I'm not sure. Would you tell me though? I want to know.
Some amazing merchandise and apparel from shop.rblrsports.com.
How could I have forgotten?
Yeah, right. Like if we're caught dollar for dollar value, you don't have to have a floor on it. Honestly, just one item from shop.rblrsports.com will kit you out in all the best Rays, Bucks, Rowdies, Lightning, Sun gear that you could possibly need, repping the Bay Area. And if you use the promo code FLAPPY, you get 10% off. Imagine if you could get 10% off your deal with Tanner Scott or with Roki Sasaki. You don't need to wonder what that would be like to get something premium at 10% off, because you can do it by using the promo code FLAPPY at shop.rblrsports.com. So maybe you should go do that.
You should all go do that right now. And the great thing about being a Rays fan as well is, even though we're in this situation where we've got this frustration around the way the ownership is acting, we've got some pretty premium baseball players on this team too. I think I'd like to talk about some premium baseball players. How about you?
Oh, I would love nothing more than to talk about our amazing arms.
Let's talk about, perhaps, I don't know if he's the most premium arm in our bullpen, but he certainly is one of the most premium. And he is the guy operating in the premium spot in the Rays bullpen. That is Peter Fairbanks, a guy that has been for a couple of years now the closer on this team, which is interesting because for a little bit kind of preceding Pete, the Rays kind of operated without a closer. And they kind of, they would give everybody a chance here and there. Saves would get thrown around, and they still do that to some degree. But it's very clear this team is incredibly confident in this guy to come in and save games. He has back-to-back 23-plus save seasons for the Rays now. Pitched in 45 and a third innings, both the last two seasons, which is kind of crazy. And he pitched this season to a 3.57 ERA, put up 0.6 F4, struck guys out 8.74 per nine, walked guys 3.38 per nine, a little bit down in the walks, a little bit down in the strikeouts too. A bit of an interesting year for Pete. I would think, in my opinion, watching him play, he maybe wasn't at his best this year. But what are your thoughts on Pete Fairbanks of this last year?
Yeah, I think it was weird, wasn't it? Because he was still really good. It just felt like a step down from his absolutely dominant 2021 2 and 3, where he was just absolutely lights out. And I think part of that comes to, I don't even want to say it was lack of health, because he's actually about on par with the amount of games he's played since 2021, around between 40 and 50. So he stayed on the field, but it felt like we had him less, and maybe that's just because it was in the back end of the year. But yeah, his ground ball percentage was down a little bit. His home run per nine was up a little bit. His strikeouts, like you said, were down. So it didn't feel like he was quite as dominant, but he was still so good. And he had lots of backup, which was really useful, I think, for him. He is such an interesting pitcher because he is amazing, right? I want to emphasize how amazing he is as a closer, and maybe under the radar how good he is, because if you go from 2021, which I think is when he became the full-time closer, if you go from 2021 through 2024, Pete Fairbanks has the sixth most FWAR amongst relievers in the AL.
Wow.
The only people above him are Liam Hendricks, Griffin Jacks, Clay Holmes, Ryan Presley, and Emmanuel Clase, who are all
pretty good
elite level pitchers. And Griffin Jacks, Clay Holmes, Ryan Presley, and Emmanuel Clase all have at least 60 more innings pitched than him. And on an inning per inning basis, only Liam Hendricks stacks up to Pete Fairbanks.
Wow. How about
that? On an inning per inning basis, since 2021, it's basically Pete Fairbanks, Liam Hendricks, and Felix Bautista in a class above everyone else in the American League. That's how good he is. And that's been for 3 years where relievers are volatile. So he is an outstanding reliever. And I honestly wasn't sure at the trade deadline if he was going to get traded or not. And he stayed on the team. And I'm super grateful because now this bullpen is so stacked. And we're going to talk, when we talk about Uceta as well, we're going to be like, how are we going to divvy up the saves between these guys, which is a lovely problem to have. The only thing about Fairbanks is he's got this weird trait where he struggles to pitch in the cold. There's a physical ailment that he has that when he is in the cold, he really struggles to get a grip of the ball, get a feel for the ball. He loses his command and he loses his stuff, which is a shame because when you think about the biggest baseball games, they happen in the fall where it gets a bit colder, and they're going to be games in New York or they're going to be in Baltimore or Boston against AL East opponents. And if he's going to be too cold to pitch there, that makes him like a weird, like great closer that is unavailable for your most important games of the year, potentially. So it's a weird thing with Pete Fairbanks. How do you feel about that whole thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So if you're new to following the Rays or just hadn't heard the specifics on it, because it's kind of been talked around and is not always clear when sort of national media or even just in a game by game they talk about what the issue is. Pete Fairbanks has what's called Raynaud's syndrome. It's a condition that affects the blood flow to his fingers, which is why we've seen him in a couple of appearances where this has affected him, blowing on his fingers, saying he can't feel his fingers. It affects the ability, obviously for him to grip the baseball. Causes issues. Famously, he loaded the bases in the playoffs and had to have Jason Adam bail him out because he wasn't able to control the ball. And that's, a huge effect if you're going to be playing in cold weather. The good news for Pete, I mean, this year's kind of unique because he's not going to be playing in the dome that we're used to him playing in. So but generally he's playing in a dome. This will be the case in the new stadium. It's the case when the Trop is available. So you're obviously going to have him 100% whenever he's in those environments. And I'm sure that the team is putting in work to find a way around this issue, even when he's not in the state in a dome. And I'm sure they'll figure something out. But I think, we're going to talk about what the Rays solution is to that problem is the other guys in the bullpen. And there's even guys we're not going to talk about today, like Montgomery, who is going to be able to provide some value there as well. And Clevenger, who we talked about earlier in the offseason. So there are lots of guys who can kind of help when that's needed. But I think, to judge him and say that he's lesser based on his maybe, questionable ability to pitch in the cold, which is the minority of the season, not the majority, I think is unfair to him. The thing that I think is fair to say is even outside of his kind of unique Raynaud syndrome, there is a bit of an injury issue with him. He was out in May for an extended period of time. Not extended. He had an injury in April that lasted at the beginning of May, and that they believe was related to either related to Raynaud's or something kind of similar with a nerve issue. And then he also had a lat strain in August that lasted most of the month of August and almost all of September, leading right into October when they activated him back. That I think is the bigger issue, is that he's consistently, missed a decent amount of innings. Maybe the Rays have decided that 45 innings is the amount they want him to pitch. Maybe that's the amount he's capable of pitching. I think, most closers are pitching somewhere between 55 and 60 innings. So we're missing a little bit there. The good news for the Rays is they have the ability to fill that gap with other guys in the bullpen, whereas some of the teams maybe don't have that. The Rays do have that. But I think when you look at, you have to, take into account that there's an injury history with him. Nothing like backbreaking, like an arm or a shoulder injury. It's usually other things. Like in 2023 was a hip issue that kept him off of the field for a little while. This last season, it was a lat strain. So it's not arm stuff, which is good. It's just kind of other muscle stuff. I would hesitate to say it's a conditioning issue, but maybe he just, I don't know what the fix is around that. Maybe the Rays have just decided that he's only going to pitch so many innings in a year, and they decide when they want those innings to be. I don't know. But when you look at what he does when he's on the field, you made the excellent, point that he has been one of, if not the most valuable arms in baseball when on the field from the bullpen. And you really can't discount that.
Yeah. And I guess the only thing I would say is all his peripherals were down this year. You hope that's not a trend.
Right.
That he's 30. That now that he's 31, and you hope that he'll make a bit of a rebound. Because if those trends continue, I think his results are going to worsen a little bit. But I think you're 100% right. Where we're in a really luxury position where we're not like where the Orioles were with Felix Bautista, where they had nobody else to rely on.
Yeah.
And you can use Pete Fairbanks as your closer, but you can afford to use other people as your closer in different spots and scenarios and feel completely fine. And I do wonder, will Pete Fairbanks lead the team in saves next year?
That sounds like a great thing for us and our audience to ponder in the time between now and when we do our player reviews and our positional reviews of the bullpen heading into 2025. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you were going to give Pete Fairbanks a letter grade for 2024, what would you give him?
A B, I think. I think he had a good year, not as good as his great years. And obviously you'd want a bit more health out of him. So I think he did well. It's a B.
Yeah, I would agree.
How about yourself? Yeah,
I would agree. It's a B. And I wonder if we would feel differently if, they did not have the infrastructure in the roster to support his injury. We might feel differently about him and feel differently about his season, but we do. So it almost kind of like, maybe it's like if he's putting in a grade for a group project, which maybe you could say the bullpen is a group project. It's not an individual performance. In the group project, he's maybe getting covered up a little bit. And this is not normally, it's been the other way around where he's been so good. It's covered some other people's issues. Maybe this last season, he's getting covered just a little bit because of some injuries and maybe the peripherals weren't the best, but everybody else is doing so well that maybe it covers him up a little bit, but I'm going to give him a B2.
Yeah, 100%. Fairbanks, when he's on it, untouchable, is prone to an absolute command blow up occasionally. Like I would say 1 in like 10 to 15 appearances, he'll just not have it at all. And that's fine. Like most relievers are like that. So don't panic too much. But yeah, love Pete Fairbanks, and I'm so glad he's still with the team.
Me too. I was definitely worried he was going to get traded. So it is very, very good to have a guy like that in your bullpen. It's also very good to have a guy like Drew Rasmussen in your bullpen. And he may be in the bullpen in 2025. He may not. We're going to talk about that when we preview him for 2025. But for now, we're going to talk about his season in 2024. What were your thoughts on his 2024, Drew Rasmussen?
Really impressed. Obviously, recovering from his second Tommy John surgery, which is where you start to really get a little bit worried about a pitcher. But he came back and was absolutely lights out of the bullpen. Sometimes as an opener, sometimes as a just back end reliever. But most of the time, he went several innings. And was really, really effective. I mean, like the base stats are 2.83 ERA, 35 strikeouts in just 28 and 2/3 innings. His walk percentage was really low. I don't think he gave up a barrel all season, which is nuts. And he got loads of ground balls. Like he was just unbelievable. He, again, on an inning per inning basis last year, was up there with the absolute best in the league. So Drew Rasmussen pitched 28 and 2/3 innings and got a whole Fangraphs war out of that. So if he pitched 70 innings, he would have led the team in WAR pitching wise.
Wow.
On that, if he kept up that pace. Which 70 innings, 70 innings is not that many innings. Like 70 innings, who pitched 70 innings this year? Aaron Savali pitched 87. So like less than Aaron Savali pitched, and he only pitched the first 2 months of the year for us. So unbelievably good. And that's what's probably earned him the extension that he got this offseason. And now it's a weird conundrum, isn't it? He wants to start. The team are talking about making him start. Do you want him to start, or would you rather he was this option in the bullpen?
I think it's really hard for me because I think my brain says I'm okay with him in the bullpen, but my heart remembers the almost perfect game from 2 seasons ago, and it's just so hard to get that guy out of my mind. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute, I want that guy in my rotation if I can have him. And so it is a really, really tough one, and we're gonna keep percolating and think about that. And you should be thinking about that too, and let us know what you think as we go kind of throughout this offseason and get to the regular season. I think it's one of those things where, we've talked about spring training being, we kind of take it or leave the results, but those are some things we're going to be really watching, things like the outfield, things like what are they doing with Drew Rasmussen. We're going to be watching very closely to see how they're treating these guys, because you are 100% right, by the way, no barrels given up by Drew Rasmussen in 2024. And whatever you want to think about xERA, expected ERA via Fangraphs, 1.98 for him for last season. So he clearly is just on. He is really, 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 really good. And the question that I think like that you just asked, and that we're all trying to figure out, is where is he going to be the most valuable? And at the end of the day, we'll make our predictions and we'll throw out what we think might happen. At the end of the day, I trust Kevin Cash and Kyle Snyder to make that evaluation on him and use him the best way that he's going to provide the most value for the team and give the team the best chance to win. Based on his contract, leads me to believe he's going to start, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the contract leads, but can we just acknowledge how unbelievable that is to have that low of a barrel, that much of a soft contact rate? He gives up soft contact at an unbelievable
It's crazy.
Level. And all of his stuff.
116 batters faced in 2024, and not a single barrel. 116 batters faced in 2024, not one barrel.
And to clarify, what a barrel is, that's anyone. That's a ball hit over 95 miles an hour, so a hard hit ball. That is in a particular launch angle kind of radius. I think it's between 20 and 35 degree launch angle, which is the best launch angles.
It's generally resulting in a double or a home run for the most part.
Yeah, you want to barrel the ball because it means you've hit it at a good angle and you've hit it hard, which is,
right.
Exactly what you want. Drew Rasmussen, to not give up a single one of those in over 100 batters faced is unbelievable. And you know what? His barrel rate in all the other years he's been with the Rays has also been super low. It's been about a 5 to 6% barrel rate, which is insanely low. So he's so valuable, and I think is the most underrated starter in baseball.
And the question will be, how are the Rays going to use him? Will they use him as a long guy out of the bullpen? Will they use him as a piggyback starter, maybe to come along the back of, say, a Shane McClanahan 4-inning dive start? He's a huge weapon for the Rays pitching staff. I am very excited to see how they're going to use him in 2025. It's one of the things I'm looking forward to the most, because I know that whatever the Rays decide to do, he's going to be excellent and he's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm giving him an A+.
Oh, yeah. When you consider, again, coming back off of severe injury, coming back in the middle of the season, August 7th, he came back to the team and doing what he did, performing at the level that he performed, A+ for me. 100% I agree.
Yeah, I guess the only thing you got to watch out for starting is you've just got to hope, if he starts, he's at more risk of getting re-injured. And if his elbow goes a third time, there's been one pitcher in MLB history that's come back from 3 Tommy John surgeries. I
think if he starts, he's gonna pitch maybe 120 innings max. They're gonna very carefully monitor the amount of innings he pitches, and I guarantee they're gonna backload those starts towards the postseason. I think there's a real world where he starts the season in the bullpen, and he slowly becomes a starter, and he's a guy who can start when we get to the end of the year in the postseason. That's my very, very early, without doing a lot of, checking into it, because I've been, kind of waiting for that to percolate through the offseason and see if we heard anything more. But that is kind of my very, very early thought on it. Is I expect mostly out of the bullpen to start the season, leading into starting, and then potentially, staying that way going forward. But that's just my thoughts so far. But we'll see. It's going to be fun to find out.
We shall see. And speaking of A+ relievers, let's talk about the revelation that was Edwin Uceta.
And he was a guy that he's a very interesting kind of story that he was over the last season, because if you remember, he had a very kind of an interesting trajectory, because he did come up earlier in the season before he really started to dominate. He came up very early in the season for like just kind of a cup of coffee. And I remember, I don't know if we talked about it on the show or not. I feel like we did, but I remember saying, hey, that guy was really good. Why are we sending him back down? He seems like he's making hitters uncomfortable. He seems like a guy that I want on this team, but clearly the team believed that they need to send him back down. So he came up in May, went back down in May, but it was only up for just a couple of, just maybe it was 5 days, I believe he was up for. But even those couple of appearances, we were like, that's really interesting. Then he gets brought back once again in June, and he is excellent all throughout the rest of the season, and truly was. And when you said revelation, I mean, you couldn't have been more right. Pitched 40 2/3 innings, pitched to a 12.31 K per nine, which is crazy. What's even crazier, 1.73 walks per nine, 0.43 home runs per nine, 1.51 ERA, xERA of 1.98, 1.7 FWAR in 2024. A unbelievably standout, excellent season from Edwin Uceta, that while we kind of thought, hey, this guy's pretty good, I don't think anybody, and maybe outside of the Rays organization, thought he was going to do what he did when he got his shot. Talk about making the most of your shot when you get it.
Yeah, this was a Fernando Rodney-esque year, like a legendary back of the bullpen year.
Nick Anderson before
Nick Anderson. Yeah. Nick 2020 and 2019 Nick Anderson level. One that'll go down in Rays history. He had more FWAR than Taj Bradley did in 40 innings than Taj Bradley's 138. Like, crazy. He had more WAR than anyone except Zach Eflin, Ryan Pepiot, and Zach Littell, who again all tripled or more his innings total. So, oh my gosh, I cannot overstate how good Edwin Uceta was. And he just I don't want to go, he just figured it out, because he didn't. I think there was a big adjustment made in his, he lowered his arm angle a lot. It used to be kind of middle high, and now it's almost very close to sidearm release. And the lower his arm angle has got from 2020. So in 2021, it was quite high. And then gradually he's lowered it every year, following, and his walk percentages went down every year with his arm angle. So I think the Rays were lean into that and make a bigger jump in dropping that arm angle, and his command has been outstanding. He already had great stuff, but now that he's got the command to run with it, he's unbelievable. If you look at his heat maps, his four-seamer is kind of wherever he wants to put it, but all of his changeups are down either at the bottom or below the zone. All his cutters are on the inner half. He is dotting, his sweeper only ever touches the edge of the zone or just inside. He is doing everything, putting everywhere exactly where he wants it. And to couple that with really great moving stuff is unbelievable. I don't know if it's replicatable next year, but if he's anywhere close, then he's going to be competing for saves. He's going to be in all the high leverage situations again. Outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And it was needed, because he took over the closer role at a time where Fairbanks got injured. And he just stepped in, and then we felt like we upgraded at the closer position. That's how good he was. And we upgraded over the third most valuable reliever over the past 3 years, which shouldn't have been possible, but that's what we did. Easiest A+ I've ever given in my whole life.
Yeah, and I think, if you're looking for a nit to pick in him, and there is one to be found, I think, and it's in the fact that he is a fly ball pitcher. And if you are a fly ball pitcher with a big fastball, there's always the potential for you to give up home runs. And I think if we're looking for, a way in which things could go south for him, it is in potentially giving up the home run. Now, the counterpoint to that is if you look at him throughout his career, that's never really been the way he's got beat. He's not usually giving up a lot of home runs. So, that is we hope that kind of stays that way. He has had some seasons where it's gotten a little bit higher. So we would hope that it doesn't go that way, and that we hope that that's what he's taking out of his game. But that is the area where if you start to see things go south for Edwin Uceta, it's probably because the fact that he's a fly ball pitcher is hurting him. Steinbrenner Field is going to be a little bit more hitter-friendly of a ballpark. The Trop is very pitcher-friendly for a fly ball, pitcher especially. It's a very, very pitcher-friendly ballpark. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does this year. But again, he doesn't need to get a bunch of saves. Where he saw the most use was in kind of going and getting 2 innings. And he ended up picking up some saves when needed, but he's really good at going in and giving you 2 really, really good innings. I think we'll see a lot of him following up from starters and kind of getting in the middle between a starter, even if they've gone longer, maybe giving some of the other guys a rest, going out and getting 2 to get you to Pete or to whomever you want to be closing that day. That I think is where he provides the most value. I mean, closing is great, but I think if he starts to close more, my only thought is I wonder if the league is going to eventually try to figure him out, because they're going to try to figure him out. Will they? We don't know. But the more of a spotlight you put on him, if you put him as the closer, it does make you wonder if there will be an emphasis on teams trying to figure him out. He's kind of become a name now. So he is no longer kind of the shiny new, what is this guy? We've never seen him before. Teams know about him now, so they're going to be looking for ways to get at him. They may not succeed. I mean, teams look for ways, to get at lots of guys. I'm sure teams are going to look for ways to get Shohei Ohtani out, and I guarantee you they're not going to succeed at the rate they would like to. So, just because they try doesn't mean they'll succeed. But I am interested to see now that he is going to be a known commodity going into 2025, how he'll perform. However, if we're just looking at 2024, it is, like you said, perhaps the easiest A+ we've ever given on this show.
Yeah. I agree with all the points you said about fly ball and Steinbrenner Field. And also just those results are hard to replicate, even if you pitch just as well. Yeah. So don't expect that year again. But I think it'll be really interesting to watch how close he gets to those outstanding results this year. Like you said, now that he's a known commodity.
And again, when you look at how good the Rays bullpen is, he doesn't need to be as good as he was last year. There's so many guys in this bullpen. It's crazy, guys. When we start to preview the 2025 bullpen, I think we're underselling. And I think most of baseball is underselling the Rays bullpen because they're not just foaming at the mouth. But I think when we sit down and really break down this bullpen, it's going to – I mean, if you're a team looking to face the Rays, you're not excited when the Rays go to the bullpen at all.
No. They like a bullpen day is going to be a tough day for any team. Mm-hmm. And, you could even see Uceta being a cold weather closer.
Absolutely.
Fairbanks. Yeah. I could see like four or five guys getting the ninth in a close game and being fine with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you've got Rask can get it. Pete can get it. Uceta can get it. Clevenger can get it. I think by the end of the season, you'll see Mason Montgomery getting it from time to time. Can Hunter Biggie get it?
We haven't even
talked about him. We're not even thinking about him.
Thinking about Hunter Biggie.
We're not even thinking about Hunter Biggie, but he could absolutely get some. The bullpen's loaded. We could keep going on for another 10 minutes about the Rays bullpen.
Kevin Kelly.
But Kevin Kelly, we're not even talking about, it's crazy how good the Rays bullpen is. And if you want to hear us talk more about the Rays bullpen, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. Hit the follow if you're following us on social media, so that you know when the Rays bullpen position review episode drops, coming very, very soon, so that you're going to get to hear all our thoughts on the Rays bullpen and us gushing about them and telling you how, hey, maybe the Rays don't even need an outfielder because the bullpen is so good, we're not going to give up any runs past the 5th inning, so it'll be fine. So if you want to hear more about that, if that sounds good to you, drop us a follow, drop us a subscribe. Tell us what your thoughts are in the Rays bullpen on Drew Rasmussen, Pete Fairbanks, Edwin Uceta, anything we talked about in today's show. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if you drop those comments while we're live, we'll get a little back and forth going. And we'd love to have more of that. And we hope to have even more of that as we get into the season. So I think that's going to be our show. Anything, Pat, you've got to close us out?
If you're not watching live, you're missing out on the amazing jazz production number that plays during the countdown before we go live. So if you get there early, if you get here early, like 3 minutes before we go live, because we go live and then the show actually starts about 5 minutes later. So if you turn up during that little period, you get a fun custom song made by our producer, which varies in genre, but it's been like a nice jazzy bluesy thing the past couple of weeks. And I think that's worth tuning in for alone.
I agree. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in with us all off season. We're getting closer and closer to the season. We hope you'll continue to stick with us. We're excited to talk ball with you guys. But for now, Raise up.
Raise up.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.